Hi, everyone. Just wanted to quickly go through the slideshow that I made in terms of assessing students and collecting data to inform instruction and to help provide useful guidelines for students in the classroom. So my data set was, the way I altered my data set was that I manipulated the data to represent something that would be accurate for me, which is 8th grade social studies, one of the classes that I currently teach. So I had in my set 23 students. I had 8 different forms of assessment to inform instruction. I had one subject unit. This was over the about 5 weeks or about a month. The assessment system that I used was 1 to 4. In other words, there's no percentages or grade averages. Classroom formats in person, and the data measures multiple areas. And in this case, it talks about behavior, attendance, academic skills, collaboration, creativity, and communication. So in other words, 21st century skills. I thought about the data and what I would expect to see versus what I would later retrieve from the data. And in this case, it would be identifying student groups. So in this case, it was talking about heterogeneous and homogeneous groups. In this case, that means understanding how to identify competencies and how to identify strengths and challenges in certain groups of students, and then according to the data and research, assign them into flexible groups. In this case, the purpose for that is to help students identify 2 different areas. In this case, at the bottom right-hand side of the screen, it says groups can meet student needs. So in this case, certain groups will be created in terms of meeting those challenges or in meeting those gifted level students. And in other groups, it would be to achieve certain goals. So in this case, it would be learning goals or project goals. So the purpose of these flexible grouping is to create both heterogeneous and homogeneous groups that would in turn meet their needs. Students are grouped and created and recreated based on the context of what they're learning. So in this case, certain groups might excel in certain areas, whereas certain groups might excel at different expectations in a classroom. The 8 different forms of assessments that I went through in my groups, in my data, were using Kahoot-style quizzes for pre-assessment and assessing. I used quick writes for reflection and collaboration, independent working. I also used 2 different formative assessments, and you can see that they repeat over the 5 weeks. This is a good way to collect data and then compare it with what students are learning and demonstrating. You can see here that they are repeated categories for comparison and contrast. And you'll see that in the data that I'm presenting right now. So this chart shows both Kahoot quizzes 1 and 2. And the bottom axis is the 23 different students, and this is their score out of 100% of what they got during these different categories. You can see that one student only has data for Kahoot Quiz 2, which means that they skipped the first class and did not attend. Here are the data frames for that activity, and you can see identifying like one student did not attend Kahoot Quiz 1. And in terms of that, you can't collect the data, but you can still gather information about that, which means that you might want to check in why that student has been truant. And in other cases, you can see that if one student is achieving highly, to compare that and to keep that data going cohesively, you would want to see that they're still scoring highly. In terms of informing the instruction, when you think about reflective activities for students, you want to think, are they completing it, and how are they going to continue their progress? In this case, an independent assignment that they could do on their own outside of class as well. For formative assessments, you would also hopefully see all students complete this activity. And again, it shows you different scores that were attained by all of these students. Because each of them completed it, you can see that they all achieved at least a score of 1. And you can also tell which students are also achieving high marks. Again, you can see that one student, all the way on the right-hand side, did not complete the first formative assessment, which is something that you would want to go in and check to see, what is the reason that they did not attend class or that they didn't complete this formative assessment. And hopefully you would be able to get a score from them later on. I drew a red line there to show you that the base mark is that they should be achieving more than a score of 1. Now, you can see that there isn't necessarily an average. Many students are achieving 1. The data was represented in this way so that you could clearly see in these bins how certain students are, that there is a very large difference between students that are not excelling and students that are excelling. in this slide, I'm talking really just about what the student is suggesting. So at the bottom, I say in this data frame, students that scored a 0 or an ungradable grade did not participate in an activity. For a group activity, this is absolutely crucial because they must provide data in order to make sense of their instruction. So getting them in the class and getting them working, whether it's in person or online, is essential for informing their instruction and to help them achieve their learning goals. You can see here that a number of students did not attend a group activity, or in other words, a different type of formative assessment, and must then find a way to demonstrate different competencies for this unit since they missed this assignment. But the last assignment of this unit was a summative, and again, you can see that there is a very different representation. The same representation that was depicted before. Many students achieved a 4, about 34%, and many students achieved a 1, 39%. They're nearly even. A total of 23 students were able to take this assessment, and the student scores were again unevenly distributed, with 14 scoring above a 1 and 9 scoring at least a 1. Here's the data frame as I manipulated it and as I laid it out for this activity. You can take a look at that if you visit the submission page. And in conclusion, the way that this would inform my classroom would essentially be highlighting students' individual work, using that data to then determine how to differentiate their instruction. Thanks so much for watching, and feel free to leave a comment below.